Styrofoam printmaking is a great way to explore the process of printmaking, which is the process of creating multiple artwork by using a printing plate or a surface to transfer an image multiple times. So with this tutorial, we're going to be spending a lot of time drawing, tracing, and redrawing again, and then using block printing ink to print on a multiple or different types of papers. So this is a great way to learn printmaking if you've never done it before, because drawing is the basis. If you love learning about art, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an art tutorial. Today, I'm trying out Scratch Foam Board, which I bought online, and I'll put the link in my description box. But you can do styrofoam printmaking with any styrofoam that is close to a paper plate. You wouldn't want to do it on like styrofoam that comes in a packing box. It needs to be something that you can carve into. To start, we are going to draw out our image. And my students are focusing on musical instruments. We've been listening to jazz music. We're looking at Romare Bearden and the Harlem Renaissance. And although a ukulele isn't an instrument that you might see in a jazz band, I'm picking it for personal reasons. It was the first instrument that I was given by my dad, and it's also the first instrument I learned to play. Secondly, my students find the basic guitar ukulele shape less challenging to draw. So you can see I drew 2 circles from a line that I use with a ruler. So again, I always encourage my students, it should look like you drew it, right? This isn't a photograph. We're not trying to represent a guitar where someone would be like, oh, look, that's a photograph. It should look like your hand created it. So yes, I could print out a picture of any musical instrument and I could trace it, but I'm encouraging my students to really push their style. Let it look like you drew it. That's the whole point. For the ukulele, I'm showing you me sketching this out slowly in case you're interested in the same instrument. But with styrofoam printmaking, you could draw a Zentangle, you could draw a still life with flowers, a portrait, you could even do a landscape. Basically, if you could draw it on a piece of paper, you can carve it into styrofoam and make a print. I'm going to speed things up a little bit because now that I have the base of my instrument, I'm going to go back in and add some details like the strings. I have my sound hole here, and I might even add a few designs in there while I'm at it. Styrofoam printmaking is all about filling up your space with lines and designs. So right now you're just working on a piece of paper, but eventually you're going to carve this into your styrofoam, basically making a stamp. So every line you draw, you have to think in reverse. That's going to be pressed into the styrofoam to leave a gap or a space, and so the ink will skip it. So everything you leave white on the opposite end will be rolled when we do the brayer and we roll the ink. That's going to be covered in the ink. So your background is essential with this style of printmaking. So what we're doing in class is we're listening to a variety of different music styles, and rocking out to ukulele music is a really relaxing thing to do. And you can think about, what would the sound waves look like extending from my instrument? Would they be smooth and curled? Would they be jagged and thick? And just think about different line designs and variety. So I highly recommend, if you're doing a musical instrument like us, listen to some music and really get into the mood. Art and music are super related. So all you need to do is investigate artists of the Harlem Renaissance, think about how jazz music and how art and how poetry really connect together. So that's a rabbit hole you could really go down, because it's all about the arts. Arts with a capital A. I am not done with my background, but I have enough where I'm ready to trace my design over my styrofoam. You definitely need some tape. So once you have it lined up with the edges, tape the top, the bottom, and maybe even both sides depending on how wiggly you are, so that when you trace over the lines, you're tracing your image onto the styrofoam and you're going to have to kind of press down. Let's see if we can hear how that sounds. So that was a little awkward, but hopefully you heard the sound the styrofoam made. I turned the volume up to 500%. So yes, that was louder than what you would hear like your neighbor next to you carving into the styrofoam. And you're pressing down with your pen. See, you can't see it on the back and go all the way through, but you want to press down hard enough that it truly transfers and it makes an indention into your styrofoam. Now, spoiler alert, we're going to be retracing it. So press down hard, but just know that you will be going back and making your lines even thicker once you've transferred your image. So you can see I'm using a red pen, and for this step, I recommend using something that has a color other than your pencil lines. If you did this with your pencil and then you just go over it, you're not gonna be able to see what lines you did. So that's why I'm using a red pen, so I can really see my marks. So you could use a colored pencil that was sharpened, a pen of a different color. And right now I'm kind of rocking out to my music and just adding a few more lines. I don't want my artwork too busy, but I do want enough detail, and you'll see why once I print it. I don't want just like a big black area. I'm really focusing on line quality and music. The most important things that I forgot to tell you is everything you print prints in reverse. So don't write any words, keep your design simple, and if you want an instrument to look right-handed, I put that in quotes, draw the left-handed version of it first. For example, electric guitars and electric basses, and then when you print it, it's going to be the reverse mirror image. So avoid using words. Okay, so I'm going back in and freehanding, and know yourself as an artist. Are you the type of student or person who can freehand something and feel good about it? Or are you more of a planner? Okay, I'm removing my paper, and now it's time to retrace my lines directly onto the Styrofoam. You can see my marks, so you can see where my pencil and pen press down, but when it prints, you want it to have a really bold line, and you will see that difference in just a few minutes when I do my first printing. So I'm going over the base shape of my instrument first, going over it several times to make it really dark. If anything, that's the shape I want to stand out most, is that basic shape, basic outline of the musical instrument. It is the subject of my work of art, so I want it to stand out. I know what you're thinking. Okay, I have to draw the image, transfer the image, and then trace it again on Styrofoam. And my answer to that is printmaking is a process. It's not just a drawing. And I have to admit, I always wondered, well, why don't we just draw something if we like it? Why do we have to print it? But the ability of repetition, just being able to create images more than once, and kind of the randomness of it, once you kind of do it, you get addicted. It's super fun. So this isn't a doodle. This isn't just a drawing. It's a process. And remember, they call it artwork for a reason. So I'm just going back through. My lines are changing a little bit as I go. So that's what I meant when doing your background. You might freehand more of it than you think, as long as you have your basic idea down and your basic outline of your instrument. Since this is the third time you've seen me do this, I'm going to speed things up significantly. And yes, I am doing a little bit of now for the really fun part, printing. You will need block printing ink. You can also use acrylic or tempera paint. It just doesn't really stick on there as much as it should, but it is usable. And you're going to scoop it out. I highly recommend getting a squeeze container of printing ink, which I forgot to put on my shopping list this time. And you're gonna lay it on an inking tray. And then you need something called a brayer. And that brayer you're gonna use to go back and forth over the ink, and it's gonna make a really satisfying kind of sticky, tacky sound. And you want the brayer to be completely covered with ink evenly. You don't want like an oil spill happening on your printing plate. So I'm just, since it's the first time, going back and forth, and check it out. Like I said, the lines are gonna stay white, and the printing ink is gonna cover everything that was not carved into. So with printmaking, it's confusing because you're working in reverse. You're creating a stamp, so the raised edges catch the ink, and the areas that are carved, they block the ink. Then on a clean surface, so I moved completely over to a clean area. This is my clean station. I'm taking my palm and I'm rubbing with my fingers around the edges and on the whole surface of my Styrofoam. I want to make sure that my ink transfers onto my paper, especially around the corners. So I always leave my printing plate or my Styrofoam down on my clean station, and then you're going to pull from the corner. Voila, we've got the first print. Yay, I'm really loving all those lines in the background. Next, I'm going to do something called a ghost print, and that's where you take the remaining ink left on your printing plate and you do a print knowing it's going to come off lighter because it's less ink. You've already printed once. So I'm still taking the same care to rub my hand all the way around the edges to make sure the ink truly transfers, because we're doing this without a printing press. So to really get your image on there, your hand, the palm of your hand, your fingertips, that's doing the work for you. As you can see, it's super great in color. The beauty of printmaking is you get to do this over and over again. So this time I want a little bit more ink. I felt like the first print was good, but could have been more black. I'm really looking for that black and white contrast. Now I'm gonna roll that brayer back and forth until I feel like it has enough ink. Okay, you can already see the blackness occurring on the styrofoam. This time I'm using a piece of green paper, basic construction paper I had in my supply closet. I'm taking my hand, and at this point, if your hand has ink on it and it's transferring to the back of your paper, stop what you're doing and go clean your hands. So I'm making sure I'm holding down with one hand my paper so it doesn't move, and I'm taking my hand and really pressing down on your paper. That will make sure that all the care that you put into your lines will show through when you pull your print. Pulling from the side, there she is. That's the level of ink I was really interested in. So you can see that green background looks so cool with the black ink. Last, I'm going to do a little experiment. So I'm going to do one more print, but I could just print all day long. I could print on any piece of paper I came across. The process is the same every time. Once you have an even amount of ink on your brayer, roll it across your printing plate, making sure to go to all the corners down the middle. And I'm a bit obsessive, so I kind of go over and over again. Move to your clean section. So look at my newspaper here. This is a new piece of newspaper. And I have this watercolor drip paper. I'm just curious to see. I know it's going to be a little too busy because I'm using black ink and there's a lot of black paint. I would definitely not use black paint next time, but I had it laying around, so I'm just curious, okay, what will this look like with a busier background? The green was great, and I have a vision of my students making watercolor backgrounds that don't have black in them because I'm using black ink. Now, if I was using white ink or silver ink, that'd be a different story. All right, once I press and I really feel comfortable that the ink has transferred, I'm going to take it from the corner again, or the side, pull. Okay, so it looks nice. It is too busy in my opinion. I would do bigger areas of color instead of small little splatters, but still, now I know kind of what to guide my students towards when we make our own watercolor backgrounds. So here are my 3 prints, not including the ghost print. The first one needed more ink. The green is my favorite. The watercolor one on the right is just too busy with the drips and the intricate lines of styrofoam printmaking. So you can see with the lines how important it is to press down. Some of those lines I did without the red pen, so look around the edges of the ukulele. You can't really see them. So if you're going for that, if you want some lines that just don't stand out as much, you could certainly do that. But I really feel like the green just makes my design pop. I like the simplicity of it. And also, depending on how hard you press down with your hand, some of the lines transferred on the first print I did to the left, you can see those sharp lines that go around the ukulele show up more. So printmaking is really fun because you kind of get what you get. It's a form of drawing with styrofoam printmaking, but then you get to print over and over again to create multiples of an image that you've created yourself. Thank you so much for sticking around and making art with me. And if you're interested in more printmaking tutorials, check these out.